Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's really is a great pleasure for me to be here and to be with this group of brothers that are beginning an important journey in certainly your college career. You know, as I thought about it, 34 years ago, I was not here, but I was in the same position that you are in. And that's assuming the presidency, in my case, and in many of your cases, an officer in leading your fraternity. Now, we didn't have any forums like this then. It was kind of, you know, you looked around and you learned from the guy before you and you asked the questions, but mostly, and you know, I'll just be very candid, we had no clue what we were supposed to do. And, you know, you just did it. So first and foremost, to the fraternity, the national fraternity, I really applaud you for building this kind of program, because training and education is true throughout your life, and having something like this for all you as you get started in this important role, I think is very important. Towner gave a more than necessary introduction, but let me kind of summarize, give you a little bit of my background in a simpler way. I grew up in a small farm town in Tipton, Indiana. I went to Indiana University. I graduated there. I went to Whirlpool. Well, first I got married, then I went to Whirlpool, and I've been there ever since. That's my history. So I'm 54 years, I was thinking about this on the way down. I'm 54 years old. I've been married for 31 years. I've been at Whirlpool for 30 years. I've been chairman and CEO for 8 years, but I've been a FIJI for 36 years. So I guess in terms of my affiliations, other than being alive and part of my family, that there's nothing that I've been affiliated with longer. You know, I know we've got all the different universities and chapters represented here, and I thought about how to, you know, I think the topic leading with courage is a terrific way to express it. Particularly in this environment. And when I mean environment, I don't mean right now. I mean the last 5 years and the next 5 years. Because you all at your age are in what I think 10 or 20 or 30 years from now you'll look at in time, and it will be a period where writers and historians and scholars and so on say, you know, that decade, where we're kind of right in the middle of it, 5 years before and 5 years after, was one of the most traumatic periods in a 50 or 100-year period. Because I think that's kind of the world we live in today. And it's true at every level. It's economic level, governmental level, educational level, societal level, with the things that are going on with technology. The other thing I was thinking about is the way you all communicate today is so radically different. Have any of you ever actually written a letter to your girlfriend? Anybody? You're a romantic, aren't you? Yeah. Was it a poem? Was it a poem? Okay. Well, send flowers next time. You know, I've used email for about. Well, let me back up. I was the third, in 1981, I was the third person at Whirlpool to ever use a personal computer, okay? And then I kind of went dormant for most of my career, and I only started emailing about 5 years ago, okay? I know this sounds crazy to you all. The only reason today that I text, I have children, they're young adults, 25 and 27, and I noticed about 2 years ago that I knew they were home, and I knew they had their phone with them, but I always wondered why they never answered when I called them. And then I did learn, because my wife taught me, that if I texted them, I'd probably get a response. And sure enough, like, it's immediate. So, and I know you tweet, and we do all these things, but I bring all those things up only because, you know, you're in the midst of a incredible economic, societal, technology period in time. Trust me. And I'm sure you don't see it today, but over time, you will. And I bring that up because leading with courage is really relevant. Everybody can lead in good times. Your true leaders you find in difficult times or volatile or rapidly changing times. So, I have a question for you all, any of you. Just how many of you, either in a sports team or in a job or in another church organization or university organization, how many of you led more than 10 people before? Been responsible? That's great. How many of you led more than 25 people before? That's really good. You guys are surprising me. You're going to ruin my punchline. How many of you guys have led more than 50 people before? How many of you led more than 100 people before? The reason I bring that up is when I meet with folks, and I do mentor a lot of people at all different points in their career in our organization, particularly the young people 25, 28, 30 years old. And one of the first things, and almost inevitably, when we start talking about jobs and scope and leadership, is what I call the X factor of leadership. And it's kind of like, in my mind, it's 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. And what that simply means is that as an individual, what makes you great as an individual contributor, yourself, is simply, it's all up to you. If you work hard, if you work harder, if you're smarter, whatever, the outcome is 100% based on you, right? The next job of leadership a person usually gets is leading 5 people or 10 people. And that's generally the first test of people leadership that people have. And some pass and some fail. We're a company, we have a lot of engineers in our company. And I don't pick on engineers at all, but being a great engineer does not mean you're a great manager of engineers, okay? And because if you keep doing the same thing that you did as a 1X person with 10 people, then basically you're going to struggle. And I did. And most people I know do when they go from the individual contributor counting on themselves to managing 10 people. Then I go to the next level. Actually, it's easier to go from 1 to 100 than 1 to 10. Because when you're managing or leading 100 people, there is no chance in the world that you can succeed by doing the same thing you did as a 1X person. And if you're smart, and I know you all are, you figure out fairly quickly that through my own efforts and intelligence and smarts, it's just too big for me to be effective. And the light bulb that goes on is, I can only succeed through succeeding with my people. And so how you think about your job, how you think about how you spend your time, and so on, really does begin to change. And then I can take from 100 to 1,000, and 1,000 to 10,000, in my case to almost 100,000. The levers I have to work with and the way I now think is completely different today as a leader than it was when I managed 10 people or 25 people or 100 people. And I only bring that up to you is because I know the chapters here probably represent 30 to over 100 people, I would guess. And so your role as a leader, likely, and maybe not in this case because I saw so many hands up of people who have managed large groups before, is the first thing you got to think is, how do I get the job done through others? So anyway, my first chart I'll show here is really, so you have a new job. And in the last month or so, how many of you guys have felt this way? Anybody? For all the rest of you don't raise your hand, you probably should, okay? At some point in time you will. And it's something, as I said, my own personal experience 30-some years ago is, we just started doing it. And in a lot of cases that works, but I think you learn over time, getting things done through others, there's a lot of important lessons. talking about leadership and courage. Everybody, I mean, in fact, you guys have got it. I saw your curriculum here. You've got some great material in terms of how to think about leadership, what is leadership, you know, and my kind of job. And, you know, I get asked all the time, how would you define leadership? And I hear, you know, great quotes from famous business leaders and I have a book on my desk that I've had for 20 years. It says great leadership quotes and so on and so forth. And, you know, early on I said, geez, I wish I was smart enough to think of a great new thing. That I wish I would have been one of the guys who said those great quotes that just the light bulb went on and everybody thought you were a genius, but I wasn't. So I have a real pragmatic view about leadership. And it's kind of my words. And so, you know, people say, give me your definition of leadership. You know, it's very simply for me, leadership is a positive catalyst for change. And the words are important. The first word I start with is catalyst. You got to be the person who makes something happen that probably wouldn't on its own happen. Positive. I don't believe, first of all, why change something if it isn't positive? Second of all, I don't believe in, and some people do, I just don't, that fear or intimidation or leading because you got the big job is a positive catalyst for change. I think when you lead, you need to be leading both in a positive way and to a positive result. And then the last word's change. You got to change something. You know, some of you, and I know the chapters, the universities are different, your issues are different, your size, your age are different. But, you know, you can go into here and say, well, I'm just going to run chapter meetings, and, you know, whatever comes up we'll deal with. That could work. You could say, hey, we're doing pretty well. Let's just keep it going. Status quo. Don't mess it up. That's not a bad strategy if that's, you know, where you want to be. Or you can say, what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that we really want to achieve and do differently? And that requires change. And then you go into a whole process. How do I change something? Well, first of all, and I'll get into this in a moment, I won't. So the question becomes, how does the chapter change something? So that's my definition. Couple of points I make, and again, I'm a big believer in simple, clear, common sense, providing clear direction. Sounds simple. A lot of people don't do it. And clear direction is, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How should we go about it? And is it absolutely clear? Sound like common sense to you guys? That's a big part of leadership, is just setting direction. But it's amazing to me. In business and society, I work with a lot of charitable, nonprofit organizations. It's incredible how many times that doesn't happen. A lot of people like to talk, but getting to the point of what do we want to do, how we want to do, and why we want to do it's very important. The other thing is, I think a sign of great leaders is being clear. Clear and transparent. It is amazing to me, and I do think it's really true business people, certainly, and I think it's also true with leaders, make complex things simple. Because generally problems are, when you get to the real root cause, they are simple. A lot of times people are very vague about what they want. You may think you're telling people where we're going or what we want to do, but they don't understand. It's too vague. Just be concise, precise. The second thing, or point I would make relevant to this is, to be a leader, you got to have followers. Think about that for a minute. It's absolutely true. It's true in my job every day, and I think about that every day. Yes, I'm the CEO of a major company. I'm only a leader of the company if people follow the direction and that I try to set. And to do that, you got to get buy-in from the organization. Buy-in means people understand the what, why, and how, and it's clear to them. You get alignment. That means you get it deep in the organization. In your case, you get it in every class. throughout to every brother. But ultimately, you also need inspiration. People love to be inspired. They do. And I don't care who you are. It's better to feel good than bad. It's better to be inspired and motivated than, oh, well, I guess we got to do this. It's just human nature. And so, probably everything I could tell you about leadership is contained here. Now, applying that leadership is the art of what you learn as a person over time. The last thought I would leave you here, and it's perhaps the most important one. And I guess if I had one piece of advice, which I give myself, I give it to others, I give it to my kids, I give it to you. Leadership is a privilege. It is earned. It is not entitled. And whenever you forget that, or whenever a leader forgets that, that's probably when they go down a path that they shouldn't. You got to earn it every day, and people measure you and judge you every day. It's not something to be afraid of. It's just something to acknowledge that for every action, there's a reaction. But I think that privilege of leadership is an exciting thing. So next, let me talk about a couple things. Leadership, I'll break it into two things, leadership and courage. Leadership requires you need to have a plan. The brothers need to support the plan, whatever your plan is, you and your other leaders within your cabinet. I would argue the plan ought to be worth achieving. Why do it if it's not, why put in the effort if you don't have a positive output? And then your job is to enable others to succeed in doing it. To me, that's kind of the nuts and bolts of leadership. Courage is interesting. My thoughts around courage, people may comment to you for some decision you make or something your house or your chapter does, and they say that was a courageous thing to do. I thought about this probably a half a dozen to a dozen times in my career, that comment made to me about the company or something I had done and so on and so forth. And the first couple of times I kind of shook my head and said, what are they talking about? I mean, I didn't save anybody's life. I didn't put my own life at risk, because that's kind of my initial thinking of courageous. But over time, the more I think about it, it's really, it's doing something that most people generally would not have done. And if it's a positive thing, people tend to think that to be courageous. So as I think about courage in leadership, there's a couple things that really, in my mind, enable that. One is, as you all are leaders of the fraternity and of your chapter and house, you've got to take personal responsibility. You are responsible. If you're the president of the house, whatever happens in the house, good or bad, ultimately is your responsibility. Sometimes bad things happen. You say, oh, I wish so-and-so hadn't have done that. That's true, but you're still responsible. So you need to just, and a responsibility isn't overbearing, it's just an awareness and an acceptance. Yes, I am responsible. The second thing is you got to be accountable. Accountable means you have to live with the results personally. You and your cabinet. And again, if you have those two things, you accept responsibility and say, yep, I'm accountable for all the good or bad outcomes of the chapter, then you probably have the opportunity to be courageous. Because courageous then, for me, is very simply always doing the right thing. Whatever it is. A lot of times, people think something's courageous because it was tough or hard. It had risk to it if you didn't succeed. But at the end of the day, they would all acknowledge, yeah, that was the right thing to do at the right time. And decisions, courageous decisions, are the same way. And, what I say is, in the times in my career where people said you've done a courageous thing, or the company has, I didn't I did accept responsibility. I am accountable. I understood the situation, but for me, it took me a long time to realize that for me, I didn't view it as courageous. I just thought it was the right thing to do. And if you always do the right thing, sometimes those will be courageous decisions. The other piece of that, I would say, is always, and this is important, given all the constituencies that you all serve in your new roles, with the university and all that. I'll talk about constituents in a moment. The other great test of leadership, because this is something nobody can do for you. You have to do it every day. Is you got to pass the mirror test. Look in the mirror every morning and said, was that the right thing to do? And if the answer is yes, then you're probably doing the right thing. If the answer is no, then it probably wasn't the right thing. But that's where, if you take that individual personal accountability, your barometer is always going to take you the right way. And I think in tough times will help you easily, because I think the most courageous decisions are the easiest decisions because they're the right thing to do. Now, you may never have an event or an opportunity or something around you that even has you make a courageous decision, because it usually has to do with something good or bad changing or a direction that you choose to take. But those are kind of, when I think about this, the title of the theme of this conference, Leading with Courage, to me, breaking it down nuts and bolts, this is what it's all about. A couple other areas. And again, let me be the first to admit, I didn't do this when I was in your shoes, okay? We just started. And basically didn't have a lot of clue. My personal story of becoming president was, I was fortunate. The house was doing well. My class was a good class. The house was in good shape. We had a good support with our house corporation. No really big issues. But one other thing, I had a great guy that I followed. Actually, the 3 previous presidents were all, in my mind, really great presidents. They're all 3 very different, but they're all great. And I spent, probably the only preparation I did do, and it was just by chance, was spent an hour with those 3 guys. I said, tell me what you did, tell me what the issues are, and by the way, if I have a problem, can I call you? That was a preparation I basically had. And so, but the guys, as I think about it, it does start with the values of the fraternity. The fraternity's 163 years old. The values are 163 years old. They've withstood this test of time. They're values we can live by during your college years and after. Friendship, knowledge, morality, excellent service. Your challenge is, how do you apply them consistently to brotherhood, academics, intramurals, campus activities, services, because that's what the fraternity does. So if whatever your plan is built around, if your values are always there, how you apply them will probably lead to a good plan. So, I guess my first piece of advice about starting your new job and from a leadership, build an agenda with your team around your values and the ambition of the chapter. What do you want to do? And again, I'm sure there's some similarities between the chapters, but there's probably some big differences. And I couldn't begin to offer you what those are, but I think if you get the right input from your team and from your chapter, that's basically how you go about building a plan. The next thing I would and this is more, I guess, personal, but I also think is very in line with the fraternity values is excellence. And, again, it probably depends on your personality. It depends on how the chapter feels and so on. But my point was, do something of value. At minimum, I would start with, I want to leave the house better than it was when I started. Okay? I certainly don't want to go backwards. I guess I'd hate to look back a year from now and say, well, it's not any better, but it's not any worse. That's kind of, I don't say a waste of time, but it probably is. So my simple thing is, why do something if you don't do it well? I would say, and these are some, not my lines, but they're good ones. The expectation of success usually precedes success. You got to expect to succeed if you really want to succeed. Being lucky. When really young people ask me, how did I get to be CEO? I said, I was lucky. And they laugh and so on and so forth, and there's truth in it, by the way. But partly depends about definition of luck. And this isn't my line either, but it's one I learned a long time ago, and I thought it's absolutely the best definition of being lucky I've ever seen, is that's when preparation meets opportunity. And so in my lucky equation, my job was preparation. Academically, and I'll talk about my experience with the fraternity and so on and so forth. And I was fortunate I found a company, and it was in a time and place where there was the opportunity. And for me, that's the lucky reason why I got to have the job that I have today. Now, the corollary to this saying is, it is funny that the harder I work, the luckier I get. And so, my point I would make out of all of this is set a high bar for success. If you really don't do it if you really don't believe it. Don't do it if you don't have buy-in. And then if you work hard enough, you'll probably achieve it. And that's true a lot of the time. A couple other thoughts for you before I open up for Q&A here. Talent. I know we walked into a recruitment session that you were having. And again, I think it's true across the chapters in the country. I certainly know it is from my alma mater, that the strength of our fraternity is a lot of things, but the continuation of success begins with rush, pure and simple. Everything, and by the way, this ought to be easy for you all to remember. How many of you like sports? Anybody like sports? Okay. Does good talent usually beat bad talent? Usually. Most of the time. Good talent with good values, with good coaching, almost always beats mediocre or bad talent. But the point is, it starts with talent. And that's what Rush starts with. I think, and I've known quite a few chapters and people from different chapters, and I know in my personal case at Indiana, great rush and a great rush and pledge process almost always is correlated to having a great house. Almost always. Now you can mess it up, but if they have a great rush process and do it year in, year out, year in, year out, set the standards high, the brothers pay, they know. I knew when I rushed at our school, at our chapter, this was a big deal. In all 4 years during that, some of us, I did, you like to do other things. You get lazy sometimes. You don't sometimes always want to do all the fraternity activities. In my 4 years, the one thing nobody ever bitched about, you knew when it was rush time, it was rush time. And there was no doubt about it, and just intuitively over time, you knew if you didn't do that well, something good or something bad would happen over time. It doesn't happen by chance. My view is learn from the best. And I know you share best practices here. Learn from other chapters. Take the best practices you can find and implement them, and then make them better. My other view is once you have talent, keep it. And once you've made sure you've kept it, make sure you use it. Because that is how you can advance the activities of the chapter for success. I would argue that over time, and it's it's interesting because during your 1 year or so as in your role as a cabinet and as presidents, there's a lot of things you can tick off that I did or I didn't do and so on and so forth. And probably a gray area is how well did you rush that year, because time tells. let me tell you right now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you'll all say, first of all, then you'll know how well you did. It is your most important responsibility. And so I would tell you, I mean, I know a lot of you do it really well. Keep doing it. It makes a difference. But, and by the way, the same thing in my job. I spend, my first 10 years in the company, I'll bet I didn't spend 5% of my time on recruiting and talent. Partly was the job, partly was I was too busy worrying about getting my job done and so on and so forth. I spend close to 50% of my time on it now. It's there's a lot of things I could do, but if I don't do that one well, all the other things I do don't really matter that much. A couple of final thoughts, maybe just to summarize. If I had the wisdom 30 years ago that you all had today, I would do these things. I would create an agenda and try to gain support of all the brothers, because you need buy-in. I'd set the bar high on whatever your goals are, and really strive for excellence. I would always make sure that we did the right thing. The right thing, by the way, isn't the safe thing all the time. The right thing is the right thing, whatever it is, however hard it is. Lead by example. Again, you were elected, you weren't anointed, okay? Don't ever forget that. And again, leadership is a privilege. Stay true to your values. And again, people like to talk about legacies. Trust me, you can't create a legacy in 1 year. But I would just say this. If you had set a simple goal and said the chapter will be better a year from now than it is today, then you're probably going to do a pretty good job. So, to conclude this, I would just said I'd change the slide a little, leading with courage, but have fun doing it. With all those things I just said, I would just say it is an awesome experience, an opportunity to lead brothers. It really is. People at different times ask me, what helped you prepare for the job that you have? And I'd say this or that, school, academics, so on and so forth, experiences. But over the last 10 years or so, I got the question so often, it actually at times made me think and put my thoughts together on it. And now there's three things. It is the family environment and work ethic I had as growing up, that I got from my parents and friends and relatives. It was the competitive spirit and teamwork understanding I got from sports growing up. And it was the leadership experiences I got the great privilege to have at the Zeta chapter at Indiana University. And those are the three things I think that prepared me to do, which I'm still doing and hope to do for a while, the kind of things that I've been able to do through life. The last one was probably being a leader of Phi Gamma Delta was probably the most extraordinary of the three. I think the first two, I was either going to get or not. The third one was just the fortunate luck that I had to be at the right place at the right time. I didn't even plan ever on running or anything else, but it turned out to be the most beneficial thing I think that's helped me over the last 30 years. The last thing, truly, FIJI's not for college days alone. I think, you're too young to know that's not just a statement. I can just say from my particular life, my best friends in life are guys that I went to school with and that were Indiana FIJIs. Just thinking here, I've just randomly spoken to 3 or 4 of them in the last 2 days. Nothing, all different topics. We get together. We've had a group of brothers who, for the last 35 years, the last weekend in July, 30 to 40 of us gather for what we call the Dick the Dog Golf Tournament in Bloomington, Indiana. And it's actually sad to see because everybody still thinks they're 20. and their golf's not getting better, it's getting worse. And you know, in my case, this statement is absolutely true, and I'm sure it will be for many of you. So I'm going to stop there, and those were kind of my high-level thoughts, if you will, in terms of leading with courage and starting out in your new roles. But I will stop there, and I'd love to have any questions, comments, anything that's on your mind that I could answer. Or you can eat dessert.
All right, who's got a question? Raise your, all right, come in. Stand up, introduce your name and your school.
Hi, I'm Mike Wygocki. I'm the PL at Madison. And you made a statement earlier that said it was probably harder to go from the worrying about yourself and learning how to manage 10 people than it was to go from 10 to 100. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, from personal experience. You know, when I first managed, I don't know if it was 10, it was like 6, 7, 8, or 9, or 10 people. You know, you basically, because you don't know any better usually, is yes, you try to manage and do all those things, but at the end of the day, you still say, you know what, through my own smarts, through my own effort, whatever, I can still make sure no matter how well my team performs, I can get the job done. I remember in my own case, there were probably of those 10 people, there's 2 or 3 people who weren't bad people. They weren't good people. They were kind of cogs in the wheel, if you will. You know, they came in at X and they left at Y, and they were mildly productive in between. But they've been there for a long time, so on and so forth. And I was a young whippersnapper, and by the way, that, you know, I'm sure you too. I mean, you know, for most, and well, it's changed a lot in the last 5 years, but for most of my career, I always managed people older than me. And that was also a learning experience. But now I'm the oldest person, so it changes real fast. But in any event, is with 10 people, through your own perseverance, push comes to shove, most people still, at least in their first year or so, try to do it through the things that got them good results as an individual contributor. Some are smarter than that and don't. With 100 people, it's impossible. So it's just, it's the question is, when does the light bulb come on? And I'm just saying it comes on when it's so big that you just finally figure out, I got to do something different. I got to lead different. I got to manage different. I got to, in my words, I got to turn different knobs to get outputs through others, as opposed to amp up my knob and just do more. And that's why I think it's because 100 people, if you try to do their job, it'll kill you.
Poya.
Other questions or comments?
My name is Poya, and I'm from Chapman University. You talked a lot
where?
about
Where?
Chapman University in
Yes.
Orange County.
Right.
You talked a lot about kind of like leading through your followers or collaborators, which I kind of connected to like leadership, serving through your leaders, serve through their followers. Mm-hmm. My question for you is, you talked a lot about teamwork and collaboration, but after college, kind of like the way organizations or corporations are formed, they're kind of like a pyramid, kind of like the power model where like competition is actually the more dominated. How do you change that kind of like leadership? How do you go from like, as a leader, how do you change going from a competitive mentality of like the followers to like encouraging to be more collaborative and encourage teamwork?
Yeah, great question. Because you're going to see all kinds. And, benefit of hindsight, I can kind of give you my conclusion, but one of the toughest things for me, and I love the company that I've been with for 30 years, but it was tough going from a fraternity that I loved in an organization that I loved that always excelled with really smart people and so on, to working in your first job. And because it was different. It was really different, okay? And you work with people from all walks of life. To your point, you're competing with some of them. I mean, the first 3 or 5 years anybody's, they're the hardest, okay? Because, you start at the bottom, everybody's equal, so everybody's trying to, then you're the individual contributor, okay? And then, it's like anything else, you just got to perform. Now, you will have bad supervisors. You will have bad people you work with, and on and on and on. So all the things you describe are absolutely true. But here's a couple thoughts. One is just do a great job. Deliver results. And do it in the right way. So in our company, we talk about the what and the how. What you deliver, results, but how you do it, values. That's not a lot different than, I think of our 5 values of the company, and they're different words, but they could pretty closely be overlaid with the fraternities' values as well. Those really don't change, and I don't care what kind of company you're in. Now, the environment's different. What I see over time is the other thing is, what you have to trust is that over time, that what and the how that you're doing will get noticed. And it's hardest when you first start, because there's a lot of people, you are kind of at the bottom and so on and so forth. But I can tell you, everybody's looking for great people. And it may not be this guy who's a jerk, who's really not, who talks a good game and really not doing it. He might shoot up a little faster than you in the beginning. It won't last. It won't last. Because, think about, because if I'm a manager, ultimately, I want people who are actually delivering the goods. Go back to your values. Don't treat others like you'd like to be treated. Strive for excellence, deliver results, and do it the right way. So I can say that now. What I've found, though, people who really have great self-confidence, not arrogance, self-confidence, get through that. It's still frustrating at times, but just have confidence in yourself. And because good performers always rise to the top. It's a little ugly sometimes along the way, but it happens. And so my view is just follow your values and deliver results, and good things will happen. Other questions?
Okay, gotcha. Meet me halfway.
Okay. My name is Brent Ellis. I'm a section chief in Florida. The question I had is that in a video that I showed in a presentation earlier, there was a statistic that said that U.S. Department of Labor estimates that college students today will have between 10 and 14 jobs by the time they're 38. In your opinion, is it still possible to enter the workforce with a company at the ground level and work your way to the top, or do you have to move around in order to be successful?
No, I think the probability that you'll move, first of all, are they counting like people work at McDonald's and stuff? I don't believe those statistics, by the way. 14 to 18 by the time they're 38? These are college graduates? No way. It's just, I'm just saying, first of all, your data is
14.
Well, and plus it's from the government, so what do you expect? So,
But
the essence of your question is...
But I'm 37, and since grad school, I've worked at 5 different institutions.
But that's not 14 to 18. So you're going to have a lot of jobs in the next year, to be average.
I'm not a current college student either. So.
Okay, 5 to 7 actually sounds more realistic. But I don't think you have to change companies to necessarily. Can you go out and have a 30-year career? Absolutely. I mean, there's 150 companies in the United States if that's what you wanted to do. If Whirlpool, we do hire. Now we know we're going to lose people. We hire people with the expectation that they're. I mean, why would I'm talking university graduates? They're going to be there for a career. We still do. Procter & Gamble does the same thing. IBM does the same thing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, when I started with Whirlpool, they never hired from the outside, ever. So if you didn't start as a college graduate, you probably weren't ever going to get a job. So that's different for a whole bunch of reasons. One is, we outgrew our talent, so we had to acquire. So I'm in our mind, we're kind of like an 80 to 85 internal versus external. But external, I mean, we need multiple sources of talent and skills. That's one. Two, I think the job composition of companies is changing too. I mean, if you start out with a tech company, the odds are that tech company will be around in 5 years is low. Okay, you get bought out or go bankrupt or become part of it, whatever. So that's changing jobs. I think it's a lot easier to change jobs. Everything from just the mobility of people. People getting different experiences in different industries is a positive, but it's not as big a positive as people play up, in my opinion. I mean, we have about a 60% success rate from bringing people from the outside in, which means we have a 40% failure rate too, because some people can't make the adjustment. Okay, so it's a toss-up whether the company and industry experience build up over time probably is usually more valuable than cross-industry experience, at least in our world. But having said all that, here's what I think. You get taking a job, and you guys are 20 years old, so for the next 40 plus years, your biggest investment in your life is going to be how you invest your time. And that's going to be working, whether it's doctor, lawyer, business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So whatever you do, and wherever you do it, for me, you do it, there's only two good reasons to do it. You like what you're doing, and you like the people you're working with. And everything else then is after that. Because, as I said, why do I get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock every morning, every day, for most of my life? Because I want to. And why do I want to? It's because I like what I'm doing and I like the people I'm doing it with. And I think that's true with most people. The barriers of switching are a lot easier and so on. So I'm not so hung up. Yes, you can have a 30-year career if you choose the right company. Is it probable? It's less probable today than when I did it. I would say, my son and daughter both will be starting with their second, okay, because they did the, get a job after college, go to graduate school and so on. What they do, I don't know what they'll do, but yeah, it is normal that people change jobs more often, but I don't think it's a requirement. I think it's just a reality of the changing business opportunities that there are.
Okay, brothers, last question. There was somebody back here, I think. Anybody? Last question up front? Okay.
John Schaefer from University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire. This kind of ties into your previous response, but for those of us that are not going into like a private sector business
Right.
job, would you add or delete anything from your message today?
Nothing. True business, nonprofits. I wish it applied to government, but I'd like to see it apply to government. I'll put it that way. I think in my mind, because the only reason I say that, I mean, obviously my background is the private sector, But I'm involved in community work. I'm involved in the National Boys and Girls Club. I'm involved in a lot of different constituencies. Actually, I think I missed that one up there. But and I would say that it's true in all. It's more predominant. You know, the more business professional you are, the more predominant it is. But it's needed. But it's needed in all. No doubt about it in my mind. And I think if you ask leaders in any hospitals, doctors, whatever, they may use different words, but I think the successful ones would tell you the same thing. Well, listen, man, it's been a great pleasure for me to be invited here. I appreciate it. I wish you, don't forget the last part, leading with courage, but have fun doing it. This is a tremendous opportunity. I'm sure you'll make the most out of it. And I think our fraternities across the nation will benefit from it. So good luck. Thank you.